We just finished with Cain and Abel's story, right? Okay. Grendel's descended from Cain. And we're told the eternal Lord, line 108, avenged that death. God avenged Abel's death. Notice, who is the feud between Cain and Abel? Okay. Why the Germanic fashion, think fourfold Germanic ethic that I had written up here. You know, duty to one's Lord, duty to one's kin, duty to avenge one's Lord and kin. So if Cain killed his brother, whose duty should it be to avenge Cain? Family. At that point, according to the Genesis story, who else is there? Adam and Eve. So take Eve out of the picture for a moment. Adam should avenge his son's death. How do you do that when the killer is your other son? That's a problem that's going to come up later in the poem. Because we're going to be told about, Beowulf is going to relate a story about a father who has multiple sons, okay? One of whom is Beowulf's king and uncle, Helak. And the oldest two sons, the eldest son is killed by the next eldest son, accidentally. And by the way, these two sons' names and the death are related very, very closely to Germanic mythology. The oldest brother's name is Havkin. The oldest brother's name is Haribald. I had him written down over here the other day in the genealogy. Haribald. The next in line's brother name is Havkin. The Bald in Haribald is the Old Norse, Viking, Germanic Balder. And the Have in Havkin is Hother. In Germanic mythological tradition, it is when Hother accidentally kills Balder that Ragnarok begins. That's what leads to everything. Okay? The whole end of the world. All right? Beowulf talks about Haribald, Havkin, how Havkin kills Haribald, and it causes Hrethel to die of a broken heart because Hrethel can't avenge his son's death. This is where that whole Germanic system just grinds to a screeching halt. Where damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. If he doesn't avenge his son's death, Germanic system, he's screwed. If he does avenge his son's death, Germanic system, he's screwed. Adam can't avenge his son's death. God intervenes. Okay? Just like we're going to see fairly shortly, Beowulf's going to show up. He's going to intervene in a feud that is not his problem. The feud's between whom? Grendel and Hrothgar. Okay? Hrothgar is going to attempt to say, no, this is your problem, Beowulf. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So, God avenge the feud. From thence arose all misbegotten things. Okay? How many of you, just everyday, normal language, or if you're in slightly elevated, educated language, use from thence? Yeah, it's kind of what I thought. Later on, Lewis is going to say hither. Not many people use hither either. They would say here or to here. From thence just means from there. Why not say from there? It's more easily understood. Anyways, so from him arose all misbegotten things, trolls and elves and the living dead, zombies, folks, giants who strove against God for a long while. He gave them their reward from that. Line 111, Old English, does not say trolls. It says From thence all awoke, Eetonas and Ilva. Eetonas, stay. Eotonas. Eetonas, excuse me. E. That's Old English for giant. If you were to write that in Norse, Jotuns or Jotunas, okay? Eetonas and Ilva, elves. Tolkien's elves are not these elves, okay? These elves are evil, all right? And Orkneas, that is where Tolkien gets orcs from. We have no idea what these are. We literally have no idea. Just some misbegotten, half partially human formed, whatever. Swilcha, likewise, gigantas, giants. So, Old English giants, and then from Latin, giants. Like he wants to cover all giants, whoever the author is. Those with God strove for a long time. And what did God do? He him thus leon forjeld. He, them, that leon, Lean, okay, which is related to that word lena. He, them, that loan repaid. That is, what is a loan? When you take a loan, you become what to that? You become indebted. He paid them for that debt. Okay? So, when night descended, he went to seek out the high house. Who's the he? Grendel. He's the subject, really, of that whole long passage that was before. Because all that is talking about is the ancestry of Grendel. So, Grendel went to seek out the high house to see how the Ringdanes had bedded down what? After their beer drinking. The poet is going to emphasize the Danes drink a lot. And every night they're drunk. I don't mean tipsy. They are dead to the world, drunk in Heorot. He found there in a troop of earls asleep after the feast. Why? Because they're wasted. They knew no sorrow or human misery. That is, you could go up and shake them, and they're not waking up. Not because they're dead, they're so totally drunk. So what does he do? He takes from their rest 30 thanes. Takes 30 and leaves. All right? That does also happen to be everyone that's there. It doesn't mean he just grabs them all at once. I mean, he does eat partially some of them, and there are bits and pieces left inside. It's kind of a gory mess inside. But he takes the rest of them. So how big is Grendel? And how does he take them? There's not even 20 people in here. If I were 5 times my size, I could not carry all of you. Well, he does have a bag on his side. It's his man purse, and it's made out of dragon skin. Okay? So what he doesn't eat right then and there, he stuffs for the journey home, snacks along the way. So, morning comes, and what are we told? 127 or 8. Lamentation was lifted up after the feasting, a great mourning sound. I don't think that should be Moring. I think that's a typo. I don't think I ever noticed that before. Yeah, that should be Mouring. I didn't even look at the translation that's in here. What line is that again? 128. It's the same one in here too. Unhappy sat the mighty lord, long good nobleman. He suffered greatly grief for his thanes. Once they beheld that hostile one's tracks, the accursed spirit, that strife was too strong, loathsome, and long. What should a Germanic hero, a leader of men, do when his people are attacked? Louder. Avenge. See that duty to one's lord, one's kin, avenge one's lord and kin. They're his kin. His job is to avenge their death. And what does he do? He sat. That is the exact opposite of avenging. The strife was too strong, loathsome, and long. Long. Notice, it was no long wait the very next night. Wait, how can it be strong, loathsome, and long, and yet it's the very next night? Well, in the first line, strong, loathsome, and long, the poet is kind of, what's the phrase I want? Telescoping time. We're kind of being told there's going to be this long period of distress, and it gets condensed. And then we get the very next night. What happens? Grendel comes again. And it's implied. It's not stated directly. It's implied. Every night, 12 years, Grendel comes. And every night, 12 years, Grendel gets 30 men. Okay, remember we were told during the building of Heorot, Hrothgar built up what kind of troop of men? A large one. He had men flocking to his banner. They wanted to be one of his things. 12 times 30 times 365 times 12. That's a lot of men. Okay? Then we're told, 138, then it was easy to find a thane who sought his rest elsewhere, farther away, a bed in the outbuildings. In other words, sun would start to dip, and they'd go, I don't think I'm going to stay. I don't think I'm going to stay in Heorot tonight. But apparently, every night, there were 30 who would get wasted and drinking their beer. Oh, I'll fight Grendel tonight, and, clean them up the next morning. So, 144. So he ruled and strove against right, one against all, until empty stood, Edel, empty, idle, stood the best of houses. Notice, Grendel rules, strives against the right, or what is right. Okay? When does he rule? It's not during the day. It's at nighttime. So again, when the sun starts to dip low, most people vacate Heorot, except for apparently the 30. And we're told this happens for 12 winters. Okay? Where every sort of woe, every sort of grief is suffered by Hrothgar. What makes his woe and grief even worse? Okay, that's one thing. What else? It's all on CNN. Stories are told. Stories are spread about Hrothgar's problem. What stories had been spread previous? He's building this big old massive hall and everybody wants to be in a part of it, meaning everybody pays tribute to help in the construction of it. Now, word gets out, Hrothgar's what? If he can't avenge, then what kind of king is he? He's weak, or possibly even coward. Okay? So we get more talk about Grendel, how he didn't want peace with the Danish army, how he wouldn't settle with money, line 156, that is, Wergild. It's almost like somebody talked to him, like left a note. Dear Grendel, let's discuss peace terms. You pay Wergild and everything's fine. And he's like, no. Nor did any of the counselors need to expect bright compensation, money, from the killer's hands. Again, Wergild. Men do not, and it talks about how Grendel holds the moors and such. Thus the foe of mankind, 164, fearsome and solitary, often committed many crimes, cruel humiliations. That's what leads many of us to think it happens every night. He kills people every night, etc. He occupied Hera, the jewel-adorned hall, in the dark nights. He saw no need to salute the throne, and now I've got to do what I had up the other day we didn't get to. 168. And now we're going to slow down. 5, 66, 68. Most Okay, Leuser translates these two lines, 168, 69, as he saw no need to salute the throne, he scorned the treasures, he did not know their love. And then he gives you a footnote. This is a much disputed passage. My reading follows a suggestion made by Fred C. Robinson in Why is Grendel's Not Greeting the Giftstool, or Yiftstool, Arak Mitchell, and repeated in Mitchell and Robinson's Beowulf. Okay? So, let me do this. It says again, go ahead, come in.
Sorry.
You're fine. He translates that he saw no need to salute the throne. He scorned the treasures. He did not know their love. And he follows Mitchell and Robinson because Bruce Mitchell and Fred Robinson are biggies in Old English scholarship. Lewis is a real biggie now too. They did an edition of Beowulf, used in a lot of schools across the country. Bruce Mitchell wrote a 2-volume book, work on syntax, like $400. I mean, just on syntax, word order, right? Fred Robinson's written dozens of articles. Book I have written down over there, Beowulf in the Positive Style. One of the best things, about 115 pages. One of the best things ever written on Beowulf. But they have an approach to Beowulf that limits how they interpret. And one of the problems, I think, of that is they, how do I want to put this? They emphasize the pagan aspect, de-emphasize the possible Christian material. Take that back. De-emphasize the Christian material. It's not possible. So, here's another translation. Here's the literal translation. I'm going to write this underneath. Not he that throne, altar, gift stool, I'll talk about this in a moment, to greet, was able, treasures before God, the Lord. This is the most literal, the measurer, nor his love knew. So, put that in modern English syntax. He was not able, because most of goes together. He was not able to greet this thing. Leave it blank for a moment. Treasures before God, nor his love knew. See, how you translate this and this are really important. Yif stool shows up in other contexts, if I remember correctly, and it's usually translated throne. But look at the first part, yif. If it had a T, it would be gift. And it's related to the word for gift. The gift stool, what's that? It's the stool upon which the Lord sits and distributes treasure from. The throne. Interestingly, this word seems to be related to Old Church Slavonic, I'll talk about very briefly. This means altar and throne. Old Church Slavonic is it's the earliest surviving form of the Slavic languages, all right? If you go to an old style Russian Orthodox church, if the service is done in Slavic, it's not done in modern Russian. It's done in Old Church Slavonic. And you have to learn Old Church Slavonic because it's not the same as modern Russian. Just like Old English is not the same as modern English. It's Russian literally frozen in time from around 1000 AD. It has not changed at all, Old Church Slavonic. Slavic languages and the Germanic languages in the Indo-European groups of languages, Slavic and Germanic are two of the closest related. That is, Slavic is closer to Germanic than it is to the Italic or Hellenic or Indian languages, for example. And the same with Greek, with Germanic towards Slavic. Here's one of the ways we know that. This ending right here, that indicates dative plural. Dative indirect object for plurals, all right? Same thing happens in Slavic languages. Doesn't happen in the other Indo-European languages, okay? So, throne, gift stool, possibly altar, all right? Which of these is actually clearer and more accurate to what the Old English reads? It's this one, because this is not that difficult to understand. Tolkien, even in his edition that came out, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, done by his son, he has great difficulty with these lines. And I'm just stupid. I'll be the first one to admit that. I don't get the difficulty at all. It's pretty clear the he here is referring to Grendel, because he's who the whole passage is talking about. And Tolkien and others, Mitchell and Robinson, I'm pretty sure too, they're like, who's this referring to? Is it referring to Hrothgar? What? Hrothgar's not being talked about in that passage. He was not able to, okay, so what do you do with greet? What do we mean when we talk about greeting someone? Hi, nice to meet you, my name is. Salute What does salute sound like? Yeah. Why would you salute a throne? If the throne doesn't have anybody in it, there's nothing. You salute a person, right? Greet. It means to greet. Well, how do you greet someone? If I wanted to greet, sorry, I don't know your names. The young lady in the very back of the room with the mask, would I do it from here? Probably not. Walk a little bit closer, okay? Usually, if we didn't have masks and COVID and all that, we'd shake hands or fist bump or elbow, whatever. But you approach. So to greet or approach the throne. What's being said? Grendel can't do what? He can't get close to that seat or that throne. Where Hrothgar dispenses kingship, let's say. Okay? And then this, Madu for metoda. Well, this is plural, as I said. This is singular. This is an appositive phrase for this. It's adding information. And yet, most of us, some of us who still care about grammar, would say if it's an appositive, it has to be same case and all that kind of stuff. Singular, plural. Grammatical error. Possibly, but lots of times, dative plural nouns for certain things are interpreted in the singular. For example, the Lord's Prayer, Old English, Fader ere thuthiart in heavenum. In tha heavenum. In the heavens. Well, usually in Old English, when you're referring to the skies, you would use heavenum. But also when you're referring to just the single location known as modern English heaven, it's the same thing. You use the plural for the singular. This isn't heaven, though. This is treasures or treasure before God. The throne is what? It's a holy thing. It's a treasure before, in front of God. So if it's God's treasure, what do you not do? Especially if you're a monster descended from Cain. You don't go, my treasure, and try to approach it or take it. What else? Nor his love knew. He couldn't approach the throne. The nor here kind of implies why. He didn't know God's love. Know how? Intellectually? No, this is probably more the experientially. He didn't feel God's love. He didn't have God's love. He didn't experience God's love. Okay? And we're told, that was deep misery to the Lord of the Danes, crushing his spirit. What was? The fact that Grendel holds the hall every night. Many a strong man sat in secret council. And then we get another passage. Hrothgar's advisors, they sit there and they try to think up ways that they can get rid of the Grendel problem. What would be best for the brave at heart to save themselves from the sudden attacks? And the poet says, at times, they offered honor to idols at pagan temples. Okay? Pagan temples. Prayed aloud that the soul slayer, that's the devil, slayer of souls, even though Jesus says, don't worry about the one who can't kill your soul, might offer assistance in the country's distress. Country's probably not a good translation there. It should be more of the peoples. They didn't have a notion of, nationhood. It was all tribal. It was all family-based. Okay? Such was their custom. The hope of literally heathens. Problem is, you can only use heathen in one context. Christian. Heathen means unchristian. Pagan does not mean that. Heathen is a very limited, particular kind of word. Okay? So this is telling us something about the poet. And I'll tell you right now, I'd have to look at Robinson and Mitchell's Beowulf, because I haven't looked at it in years. Tolkien, in his Beowulf, which wasn't published in his lifetime, Tolkien in his Beowulf says everything from line 175 to 188 is an interpolation. It got added to the poem by a Christian monk copying the poem. I think Tolkien's totally wrong. I think there are ideas in these lines that are woven earlier in the poem and that go all the way to almost the last couple lines. Okay? And those have to do with some of these ideas. These are woven all throughout. These are major themes. There are others, but these are major themes that are interwoven throughout the poem. So, the hope of heathens. Such was their custom, the hope of heathens. To do what? Pray to Satan. Okay? They remembered hell in their minds. They did not know the Maker. Right? They did. There's that wissa. They didn't know the Maker. The judge of deeds. They did not know the Lord God, or even how to praise the heavenly protector, the wielder of glory. And then we get a very proverbial passage, a gnomic passage. Whenever you have woe unto him or blessed be him, that's a proverb, all right? Woe unto him who must thrust his soul through wicked force in the fire's embrace. Expect no comfort, no change at all. Okay, a couple of things there. So, what's the fire's embrace?
Hell.
That's what we assume, right? Hell. That sounds like hell. May not be. It might be, but it may not be. Notice this person is forced to do that. It's wicked force, okay, that forces him to thrust his soul into the fire's embrace. And then you get expect no comfort. What's the expect no comfort mean? To expect no comfort from the fire's embrace? Yes. Well, what's meant by expect no comfort? No solace, no consolation. No way to change at all. Now, traditional Christianity does hold that hell is eternal, and that if one goes to hell, one's there eternally, okay? But that may not be the notion that's here. What else can be, let me put it this way. How can one experience hell here? Now, jail. What else?
A monster coming and killing 30 men every night.
Okay, monster coming to kill 30 men every night. See, we've got to wrap our minds around, first of all, what that means for these people within the poem. So, think of an event and have it happen every day for 12 years. I mean, if you're thinking of, for a group of people, a tribe, so to speak, how about 9/11 on 9/12, 9/13, 9/14, 9/15 until 9/11, 2013? Okay, just let that would be kind of hell, right? So hell is what? It's suffering. That's what it is. It's endless suffering. It's things never get better. It's what everybody who commits suicide experiences before pull the trigger, slicing the wrist, whatever. There's no end. No way to change at all. It's never expecting there to be anything better. Just, again, let that kind of settle in there for a bit. That's pretty bleak, right? And what causes it? Does anybody seek out that kind of suffering? No, that's the wicked force. All right? So, no way to change at all. None of this. No comfort. It's just utter darkness. It shall be well for him. So for the person who doesn't expect any change, who expects no comfort, that is the fire's embrace. But it shall be well for him who can seek the Lord after his death day and find security in the Father's embrace. Notice what this person does. Seeks the Lord when? After. What does most of quote-unquote popular Christianity suggest today? Where am I? Cope, across the street, over there, where the Graduate Studies and Human Resources now is. Used to be Middle Tennessee Baptist. They used to have out front a bus. I'm sure wherever they are now, they still have the bus. In fact, I think I've seen it driving around. And the bus was painted with flames on the side. And it had the words, something like this, pulling souls out of hell one at a time. Yeah, I saw a couple facial expressions go down. What? Because what does that suggest? It suggests the natural location of one's soul, unless one is saved, is hell. And because of that mentality, the way Baptists sometimes, and I'm not harping on Baptists or anything, Methodists do it too, most Protestant denominations kind of do this, is 3-word phrase. Anybody know what it is? Turn or burn. Turn, repent. Literally what the word repent means. It means turn around, go the other direction. Or burn. Why? Because you don't know when the Grim Reaper's coming. Might be coming for you tonight, and if you don't take that opportunity to confess Jesus now, you will never get it again. It's not what this poet is saying. If this was a later Christian interpolation, like Tolkien thinks, I don't think this poet, or whoever interpolated that, would have said that. I think it'd probably be, come quickly, Lord Jesus, kind of a thing. It shall be well for him who can seek the Lord, what? After his death day. Okay, what does to seek mean? To look for. Like, you've died, and it's like, where are you? I still haven't found what I'm searching for. You too. Who can seek the Lord after his death day and do what? Find security. So the seeking then applies this. It's after death. It's after the change. It's seeking what? This. And getting security in not the flames embrace, the Father's embrace. Notice the flames are kind of personified as embracing. If you've ever been really, 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 really depressed, I mean nearly suicidal, you know exactly what the speaker's talking about there. If you haven't, you can't understand it quite as well. Okay? I have, so that's why I understand it. And find security in the Father's embrace. That's also partly this idea of providence. God's control. Sorry, I've erased part of it with something. Notice what comes next. So that ends that little passage. Introduction of Grendel, and Grendel coming and ravaging Herod. With the sorrows of that time, the son of Halfdane seethed constantly. Explain what that means. Louder. He's angry. Is it anger? I mean, I understand where you got anger from. What is it? Where does the word seethe come from? Or what does the word seethe mean? I mean, I've said before, oh, I'm so angry, I'm seething. What does that mean, though? Boiling. Seething is a cooking term. It's used in relation to meat and a liquid. It's boiling the meat. So, with the sorrows of that time, the son of Halfdane, what? Not literally. We saw the same word, by the way, in terms with the wanderer. His sorrows caused his heart to seethe. So, if you're boiling, are you at peace? Are you calm? Is everything fine with the world? No. What is Hrothgar experiencing? The fire's embrace. How do you make something boil? What do you have to put under it? Heat. Hrothgar, metaphorically, is in hell at this point. Nor could the wise hero turn aside his woe. In other words, he expects no comfort. He sees no way to change his situation. The poet has just taken these lines to do what? To demonstrate what those previous 5 lines were talking about. I think that's a pretty good indicator. Those 5 lines are central to what the poet is trying to say. Too great was the strife, long and loathsome. What does that imply? How many, I shouldn't ask this question, myself. How many of you have ever, I mean, it's rhetorical, been rejected so much, it's just like you just can't. You just can't go on. That's what's crossed. Every day he wakes up, opens his eye, and there's what? Black smoke everywhere. It's just darkness and despair. Why? Because every morning, word comes. Somebody's got to go clean out Herod. There's body parts again. Oh, look, there's part of Fred. It was, too great was the strife, long in loath. Again, it's repetitive. There's no end to it. Which befell that nation violent, grim, cruel, greatest of night evils. And then the poet says, then, from his home the Thane of Helak, a good man among the Geats, heard of Grendel's deeds. And what is the poet preparing the audience for? Beowulf and change is coming. Hrothgar doesn't expect it at all. Why? Because the strife was too loathsome, long, etc. But he was of mankind the strongest of might in those days of this life, noble and mighty. And so he orders a boat to be made. And he's going to find 14 men to go with him. And we're going to be told, line 202, wise men did not dissuade him at all from that journey. That is, just like Hrothgar's wise men came up with the bright idea of praying to Satan, the soul slayer, to help them with a body and soul slayer. Don't know how that one works out. He, what? He gets advice, but does he really? All we're told is they do not dissuade him. Is that positive? No. If they don't discourage him, does that mean they encourage him? If you're talking to your parents or somebody that you love and care and you value their opinion, and you're trying to get advice and they don't discourage you from doing whatever it is, does that mean it's a go for it? Not really. But anyways, they don't dissuade him. Later on, Beowulf and the poet are going to tell us they encouraged him. And then later on after that, the poem is going to say the exact opposite, that he wasn't encouraged. So, he gets his men to get on the boat, they sail over the ocean, they come to the lands of the Scyldings. They thank God when they step on the shore. Why? Because any water crossing was dangerous, And the Coast Guard, standing up on the bluffs overlooking the shore, sees them. And he rides down on his horse, and he shakes his spear and speaks a challenge. Now, shaking his spear, that's like, holding up his AK-47 and firing off a bunch of rounds over the head. It's like, just stop right there, boys. Not a step closer. He's not alone, by the way. I mean, when he rides down and speaks to them, he's alone. But he has other men that they don't see. We're going to be alluded to in a moment. What are you, warriors in armor, wearing coats of mail, who have come thus sailing over the sea road in a tall ship hither over the wave? Okay, what does it really mean? Put that in modern English, use 5 words. Who the hell are you? That's what he's asking. Why? Because this is a bold move. This would be equivalent to what? Today. I mean, the United States got all up in arms, because China floated a surveillance balloon across the United States. This would be like a Chinese destroyer pulling into Golden Gate Harbor. The Coast Guard thinks this could be the first of an invasion wave. So, who the hell are you? He says, I've never seen anybody do what you just did. Because they didn't get approval first. They didn't send a single person in a rowboat and say, we're here to help. Can we go ahead and land? Never more openly, line 244, have there ever come shield bearers here, nor have you heard any word of leave from our warriors or consent of kinsmen. We didn't give you permission to land, and we never heard any request. But, he says, I have never seen a greater earl on earth than that one among you. A man in war gear. That is, and I hate this part of his translation, that is no mere courtier. Courtier is French. It is entirely French. It does not belong in Beowulf because of that. What would be better? Anglo-Saxon period. Who are the people who fight for the Lord? His thanes. No mere thane. You're not just some poor Billy Bob who has a sword and a weapon who gets to ride along with the big boys. When he says, I have seen no greater earl on earth, what does that mean? Okay, it doesn't mean this is Conan the Barbarian, bristles muscles rippling, etc., stands, 7 feet tall. It means Beowulf has something about his aspect, about his character, that this guy goes, not one to tussle with. This is not a guy you want to pick a fight with. Okay? So he says, tell me who you are before I let you go forward. The eldest one answered him. That's Beowulf, by the way. We're men of the Geatish nation, Helak's hearth companions. That is, we sit around his hearth. Now that sounds kind of, weird. But the hearth is at the center of the hall, and the Lord's table is next to the hearth. So Beowulf is saying, we are Helak's confidants. We are Helak's hall retainers. We're close with Helak. My father was well known among men. a noble commander named Ecgtheow. He saw many winters before he passed away, ancient from the court. Nearly everyone throughout the world remembers him well. Now, the nearly everyone might be litotes, meaning everyone, or it could mean everyone who is someone knew my father. So that if the Coast Guard goes, Ecgtheow? No, I don't think I know that name. Beowulf's reply would be, it's because you're nobody. All right? So he lived, he says, passed through many winters. Why tell us that? So what? Your dad was old. Big deal. He lived through many battles, is his point. He wasn't a slacker. Okay? He says, we've come with a friendly heart. We seek you, Lord. Be of good counsel. Tell us how we can get in with Hrothgar. He says, we've heard about Grendel, and with a generous spirit, 277, I can counsel Hrothgar, advise him how, wise old king, he may overcome this fiend. In other words, I can do what? I can help him change his situation and help him find comfort. Remember, the person who's going to embrace or be embraced by the flames is one who doesn't expect comfort and doesn't expect things to ever change. Beowulf has just said, I'm the bringer of change and I'm the bringer of comfort. And his seething cares turn cooler. Or else forever afterwards a time of anguish he shall suffer. His sad necessity while there stands in its high place the best of houses. Or else forever afterwards. That is, after my visit, forever. Germanically speaking, forever means what? It doesn't mean eternity. It means until you die, he'll suffer. That's pretty much the fire's embrace. So the watchman speaks. He stand up there listening to Beowulf, and he says, a sharp-shielded warrior must be a judge of both things, words and deeds, if he would think well. Meaning what? What does he have to be able to determine from listening to somebody speak?
If they're being honest, or like if he's actually who he says he is.
Okay, what else?
Their character.
Okay. What does the Wanderer say about boasts?
Back it up
How?
by action.
You have to do it. In other words, it's one thing to make a boast. It's another thing to be able to carry it out. That's what the Coast Guard's getting at. He has to be a judge of both things. Words, boasting, right? Because any of us can boast. Any person in this classroom can say, elect me president and I'll solve the national debt, make sure there aren't any little floating things flying over the United States, whatever. Can we do it if elected? That's the question. He says, I think you can do it. I understand that to the shielding Lord, you are a friendly force. That is, I don't think you're here to invade. Go forth, bear weapons and armor. In fact, I'll lead your way. I'll leave my men behind. They're going to guard your ship. All right? So he leads them to Herat. And we get a description, lines 300 and following. Little description of the ship, and then of the men and some of their armor. 303, boar figures shone over gold-plated cheek guards, gleaming, fire-hardened. They guarded the lives of the grim battle-minded. And prior to Tolkien, I mean, this is the kind of stuff everybody read Beowulf for. Material culture of the ancient Germanic peoples. Why? Because it's telling us their helmets had these cheek guards. Okay? Things that guarded their cheeks. So if a sword gets swung like this, it's going to hit a metal plate and not just cut through your face. Still going to hurt like you know what, all right? And it has what? It has a figure of a boar, the helmet does. Either up here, like a little statue-like thing of a boar. Boars were talismans to ward off evil, to ward off danger. Also having this thing up here, if a sword was brought down on it, it softens the blow. Or the boars were actually engraved or imprinted on these cheek guards. I'll put up a photo of the Sutton Hoo helmet where you see these all over this thing. And we have other examples of helmets with them also. So it's like you're walking around with these magic spells on you, okay? They get to the hall. The Coast Guard says, I've got to go. The Almighty Father guard you in his grace. Now that is not a pagan statement by any mark, by any means. Why? Odin, who is called the Almighty Father in some Germanic literature, but he's not known for his grace at all. So, Fit 5. The road was stone paved, the path led the men together. Who built paved stone roads? Or stone paved roads? The Romans did. This is set in modern day, the island of, I think it is Zealand, off Denmark, between Denmark and Sweden. Romans never got that far north. Romans never got farther north than the Rhine River. So how could they be walking on stone paved roads? The Romans were the only ones that built roads with paved stone. It's probably an anachronism. That is. That's telling us something about the poet. The poet is familiar with paved roads. Okay? Which would probably tell us, if this is an early composition, the poet is not from northern Germany or Denmark or Scandinavia. That the poet has at least been south of the Rhine and has seen a Roman road. If the poem is early. If the poem's late date, still hasn't been in any of those places. But it's written in Anglo-Saxon, Old English. Those people lived where? England, lots of Roman roads. Because one of the first things the Roman soldiers do is they start building roads. They bring in their Roman engineers and they start building roads. You can walk on some of these roads today. Romans built better roads than anybody ever has since then. I mean, they didn't have to repave them every 5-10 years like we do. So that's just a little, historical kind of tidbit. They make their way to Herat, and a soldier stops them. Who are you? Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Essentially. I am herald and servant to Hrothgar, line 335. Never have I seen so many foreign men so fearless and bold. If you've ever seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it's like Butch and Sundance keep saying as they're being chased by the authorities, who are these guys? I mean, these guys are armed to the teeth. And he's like, I've never seen anybody this courageous, I guess you could say. And he says, for pride I expect, and not for exile, and for greatness of heart, you have sought out Hrothgar. You're not exiles. You're not carrying all that war gear because that's all you have and you had to flee. No. I think you're here for pride, meaning you want to do some great glorious deed and get fame and reputation, like they want to burnish their, resumes. So Beowulf answers, we are Helix's board companions. Notice, board, not hearth. Why? Because the alliteration in that line is going to be on the B sound. Beowulf ismi nama. Beowulf is the guiding alliterative, the B is the guiding alliterative sound. And so it determines the alliteration. It doesn't determine the stress, but the alliteration. You get one other book in that line. Lost my place. Board. But he's also telling them, we eat at the same table as Helak, the king of the Geats. So he says, I want to tell Hrothgar why I'm here, if he'll let me greet him. Wulfgar spoke, that's the guard at the hall, and says, I'll tell him what you've requested, and then I'll come back and tell you what he says. Cool. He goes and talks to Hrothgar, and notice we're told, 357, where Hrothgar sat old and gray-haired, with his band of earls. I believe, yep, it's the first time Hrothgar is described as old and gray-haired. So Wulfgar tells him who has come, that the chief among them is named Beowulf. They want to talk to you. And he says, don't refuse them. Why not? Because they look like they're capable, and what's been going on for 12 years? We got a Grendel infestation problem. We need an exterminator. Hrothgar speaks. Protector of the Scyldings. Really? I mean, yes, that's kind of his title. How well has he been protecting them for the last 12 years? I mean, 30 guys every night. I knew him when he was nothing but a boy. Hrothgar is telling us, and he's telling Wulfgar, I knew Beowulf when he was a boy. Define boy. What age range? This is what some of my students, my first class, came up with. 3 to 5, 8 to 10, 15 to 20. I was like, really? Because that means some of the guys in this class, you're a little more than boys. No. It's just wrong.
8 to 10.
Louder?
8 to 10.
8 to 10? Yeah, I'll be generous. Somewhere between 3 to 10. 3 is too young. It's more like a toddler, almost. All right, but I'll go with it. 3 to 10. So he knew Beowulf when he was, say, 3 to 10. His old father was called Ecgtheow, to whom Hrethel the Gate gave in marriage his only daughter. Remember the other day, I had up the Hrethelings over here. We had Hrethel, Haribald, Halfkin, Helak, unnamed daughter. Just like over here we had the Scyldings with the unnamed fourth child who was a daughter. So Hrethel the Geat gave in marriage his only daughter. Now his daring son has come here, sought a loyal friend. Cool. And then Hrothgar tells us what he's heard about Beowulf. And that there are stories circulating. Seafarers, in truth, have said to me, those who brought to the Geats gifts and money as thanks. What does that mean? Seafarers bringing him tribute. Okay? That he has 30 men's strength, strong in battle in his hand grip. And probably what almost all Beowulf scholars think is that means 30 in each hand grip. So he's got the strength of 30 men in each hand grip. Kind of strong. Holy God, in his grace, and it's highly shippen, I think it's highly gold for his arstavum, for his graces, has guided him to us. Thank you, Jesus. God has guided Beowulf to us. To the Westdanes, as I would hope against Grendel's terror. But it doesn't say, as I would hope. It says 384. Thus ich wen habe, that I have thought, or as I have thought, or as I have expected, wane can be hope. But it doesn't have to be. So what's the difference between as I have or would think or thought versus as I would hope? Hope's positive, right? Always. Yeah, you can think about something in the future that isn't positive. Against Grendel's terror. Because the as I would hope, that implies what about Hrothgar's mindset? There is going to be a change. Hrothgar's not there yet. He's going to be, but he's not there yet. To this good man I shall offer treasures for his true. Send him in. Notice, be hasty. Quick. Why? Sun's getting low. What's going to happen when it's dark? Grendel's going to make his way. So, Wulfgar sends word to Beowulf and his men. He knows your ancestry, and you are to him hardy spirits, welcome hither, etc. He knows your ancestry. Is he speaking just to Beowulf? Probably. He knows your father, is what that means. So, come on in. But, he says, leave your shields and your spears here. You can wear your helmets. You can wear your coats of mail. Why? Because those can't be used as weapons unless you're going to take it off and swing it at somebody. But swords, spears, shields can be used as weapons. Those have to be laid outside. Why? I mean, this is kind of rude, right? It's like you're invited to a party at somebody's house and they tell you, leave your coat outside. A little bit different, but you got a bunch of young men, they're drinking beer, high testosterone environment. They start bragging, telling stories. Oh yeah, well I, and soon there's dead bodies everywhere. And we know that from other Germanic literature. There's a story that's an analog of Beowulf. That is, it has passages that are similar and a character who is similar to Beowulf, but he's not Beowulf, called the saga or something of Bothvar Bjarki. It's the guy's name. And in it, this guy's invited to a hall, and people, these Vikings, essentially, start drinking, or these Norse start drinking, they get drunk, they start fighting, and they slaughter each other. Bothvar Bjarki is not part of that slaughter. He just kind of watches from the sidelines. Beowulf, when he's dying, is going to say at the end of the poem, I never drunkenly slew my hearth companions. It's one of the things he holds up to God, kind of like, see, I'm a good guy. It can also be translated, I never slew my drunken hearth companions. Right? Big difference there between those two interpretations. So, they go in. And Beowulf says, and we're told, 405, Beowulf spoke, his byrnie gleamed on him, war net sewn by the skill of a smith. So, we get that just before he speaks, and just at the end of his speech, Beowulf is going to tell Hrothgar what he wants done with that war net, that coat of mail that he's wearing, should he die, which we'll get to in just a moment. So, be well, Hrothgar. Remember the day I put was hail up here. That's what that means. I'm Helak's kinsman and young retainer. In my youth, I. Now, as somebody who is young, do they refer to things they did in my youth, I? Not usually. If usually when you use language like, well, you know, in my youth, that implies what? I'm no longer a youth. Yeah, exactly. I'm older now. And what did he do in his youth? What's Beowulf doing at this point? Possibly. Put it in a modern context. What is this scene really? In a modern context. Take the monsters out for the moment. Beowulf has gone into a office. This is his job interview. Okay? He's doing what? Giving his resume. What's his resume for this particular job? What's the job he's applying for? Monster killing. So, he says, in my youth I've done many glorious deeds. Skip a few lines. Once we heard about what was happening to Heorot, line 415, then my own people advised me, the best warriors and the wisest men. So that's not, they did not dissuade him. That's now a positive. They advised me, they said, Beowulf, you should do this. They did what? That I should seek you out, because they knew the might of my strength. They themselves had seen me. Here comes the resume. Bloodstained from battle, come from the fight, when I captured 5, slew a tribe of giants. So captured 5 what? Probably giants. So I captured 5 giants, and then I slew a tribe of them. What's meant by tribe? Is this like a, 4 or 5? What modern word do we use in English that derives from Latin to describe killing a group of people?
Slaughter.
Okay, that's not from Latin. Genocide. Genus, kind, nature, group, side, death. He slaughters a race or tribe of giants. Monstrous. But this is a good thing, because he's got to kill a giant, essentially. What else? So I captured 5 giants, slew a tribe of them, and on the salt waves fought sea monsters by night. I survived that tight spot. Tight, like rock in a hard place. Avenged the waiter's affliction, crushed those grim foes, and now with Grendel, that monstrous beast, I shall by myself have a word or two with that giant. So 2 things there. 1, how's he going to fight Grendel? Louder? Alone. So why does he have these 14 other guys? Well, somebody had to help on the ship. Somebody had to do the rowing if there was no wind. Someone had to man the sails, okay? And what's he going to do? He's going to sit down and have a chat with them. What is, again, modern English. Whenever somebody challenges Joe Biden, he falls into this trope. Anybody know what it is? Tough guy trope. Yeah, I'm going to take him out behind the bleachers like I used to do and have a chat. He used that several times when he was running for president. In fact, he used it lots of times during his Senate campaigns and such. So, Beowulf says, Grendel and I are going to have a little talk. So he says, one wish. Just grant me one wish. Don't refuse me. Let me do this, that I might alone, and that next word should be or, not o. It doesn't make any sense to have a vocative o there. Or my band of earls, and this hardy troop cleans Heorot. Okay? So that's the challenge. Then he boasts. That's not the boast. The boast comes now. What's his boast? Yeah. I heard Grendel doesn't use weapons. I won't either. Stupid move. Because with a weapon like a spear, you could do what? You could reach somebody 10 feet away from you. You know, like this and there. Or you could throw it at them. Sword, you got at least 4 or 5 feet. With your arm, that keeps... But no, he's going to fight him hand to hand. 439. I shall grapple with the fiend and fight for life, foe against foe. Let no make passage. Let him put his faith in the Lord's judgment, whom death takes. Is that really someone you want to place your bets on? Because what's he saying? I might die. Grendel might die. Let the one who dies what? Trust in the Lord's judgment. Doesn't say anything for those who are left alive, right? I expect that if he's allowed to win, he will eat unafraid the folk of the Geats in that war. Yeah, okay. She just gave me a look. You're one of Beowulf's 14 men. What's the situation he's positing? Okay, so Grendel kills me. What's going to happen to my guys? Yeah, they're all going to get eaten. And they're sitting there going, what did he say? As he has often done, the host of the Hrethmen. Every night, 12 years. You won't need to bury me. Why? There won't be anything left to bury. If death bears me away, he'll take his kill, take to taste me, dying without remorse, blah, blah, blah. But, he says, if I die and my mail shirt is left here, the one that 405 his byrnie gleamed on him, worn that sewn by the skill of a smith, he says, send that back to Helak. Why? It is Hrevel's heirloom. It belonged to Helak's father, the work of Wayland. And you got a footnote. Wayland, the blacksmith of the Norse gods. He was a god himself. His equivalent in Rome was Vulcan, and his equivalent in Greece was Hephaestus. Beowulf's walking around wearing a mailcoat made by a god. So, it's not of little value. Send it back to Helak. And then he says, weird always goes as it must. What will be, will be. You can't change it. It may be, weird has it, this is my time. It might be grim. We don't know. So then, Hrothgar speaks. Try to do this in a couple of minutes. This is why I have all this stuff up here. Hrothgar. So, back up for just a moment. Why did Beowulf say he came? He heard about the Grendel problem, and out of the goodness of his heart, he's offering to come take care of Grendel. Okay? Hrothgar. For past favors, my friend Beowulf, and for old deeds you have sought us out. What's Hrothgar trying to do or doing? Bingo. Beowulf, you owe me. That's what he's saying. He's saying, no. This isn't because of the goodness of your heart. It's for past deeds, past favors, and old deeds. Old implies long time ago that you have sought me out. What old favors and past deeds? Your father struck up the greatest of feuds when he killed Heathelath by his own hand among the Wilvings. That's an ambiguous passage. It's read two ways. Heathelath is a Wilving warrior, okay? And Beowulf's father, Ecgtheow, killed, this is where they're reading two possibilities, killed either, let's say all of you guys are Wilvings over here. Heathelath. I killed Heathelath. the rest of you live. He that left among the Wilvings. Or, I killed all of you, and he that left was among all the corpses. All right? That doesn't mean all the Wilvings have been killed, but a band of them, a tribe of them. Those are the two possibilities. The important thing is, Ejthiel starts this feud. When the Wader tribe would not harbor him for fear of war. Waders is another name for the Geats. And what are we being told? Beowulf's father's own people would not allow him to come back home. In other words, he was made exile. He had to leave home. Thence he sought the South Dane people, that is, us, over the billowing seas, to honor Scyldings. Okay? Then I first ruled the Danish folk, and held in my youth this grand kingdom. City, treasure, heroes, all that kind of stuff. How old is Beowulf? The reason I ask is, we don't know this yet. We're going to find out later. Hrothgar ruled for 50 years before Grendel came. Grendel's been coming for 12 years. That's 62 years. From the time when Hrothgar became king. Okay? How old was he when he became king? We don't know. At least 18, maybe as late as 30. So Hrothgar is somewhere between 80 and 92. That's why he can't fight Grendel, folks. He probably can't lift a sword. So he sits and whines and moans and complains. Beowulf's father came when Hrothgar was newly in his kingdom. That kind of implies at the beginning of this 50 years. Or the beginning of the 62 years now. Question is, when Ejthiel went and sought refuge, was his wife and son with him? We don't know. We're never told. But he did earlier say, talked about Grendel giving his daughter in marriage to Ejthiel, and he talked about knowing Beowulf in his youth. There's no other time within the world of the poem that we're told Hrothgar could have known Beowulf in his youth. Now it could be that sometime during this 50 years, Beowulf was born. Okay? Not sure. But if Beowulf came with Ejthiel, let's say 5 years into his reign, then that makes Beowulf bare minimum 45 plus 12, 57 years old. At this point. 57 years old. That means, at bare minimum, when Beowulf fights the dragon, 107. 107. What are we dealing with? What kind of story is this? What kind of tale is this? It's fantasy. This is not meant to be read historically. It's got fantasy elements. All right? I'll talk about Mitchell and Robinson again Tuesday and the fantastic kind of elements. All right, we'll stop there. I know we're way behind. Just keep reading with what's on the syllabus. We won't ever catch up, but just keep doing that.